Hey guys, today's video is going to be on replacing the coil on these opposed twin Briggs and Stratton engines. And as you've seen in the last video, I put a new starter on it. This would be part 2 of the series, and be replacing the coil on it. And as far as I can tell, all the opposed twins use the same starter and the same coil. And I got the new coil right here. This ain't a Briggs and Stratton coil. This is an aftermarket coil off eBay. Got it for about $15, brand new. And the only thing I don't like about it, you got to put the boots on it. You think they'd come with it, but that ain't no big deal. I might just leave it without it if I have trouble getting the old ones off. Ain't that big a deal. Ain't gonna be nowhere near it anyway, so I don't have to worry about getting shock from it. And this is where your shut-off wire connects, right here. And they call this the new style, and we'll look at the old one here in a minute after we get the flywheel cover off. Looks like to me the hardest part about doing this is going to be getting the wires routed, especially over to the second cylinder over here on this side, or first cylinder. I don't know which one's first and second. This is probably first. It's usually the front one on the right side of the engine facing it if it's the same as the vehicle. But this would be, but I don't think it would be too hard once we figure out the way it's routed. It looks like it go up underneath a plate of metal, so we'll have to figure out what we got to do there. Might take something else loose or something, but we'll figure something out. First thing you got to do is take the flywheel cover off, and I showed it in the last video, but I'll show it again in this one just in case you're coming to this video you don't want to watch part 1. Go over it real quick. You got about 8 bolts go around here holding the flywheel cover on. This one here holds the wire on too. And you got 2 bolts here. You got 1 bolt back here that goes through this shield here. It tightens up into the flywheel. Goes through the shield, the flywheel cover, and then into the block. These here just hold this one to this. So we'll get these bolts out, and we'll look at the other side. What you got to do over there. And on this side, it's pretty much the same deal. You got a little bracket here. Here's on this one to help hold wires and stuff. Then this side, you got to take your dipstick tube holder off. You just got 2 screws here. Yours is probably not a Phillips drive. It's probably a 1/4 inch or a 5/16 drive. These have been replaced because I think the old ones broke or rusted too bad to do anything with. I put these sheet metal screws in there, which works just fine. Your coil's on this side, so everything else will be done over here except for routing the wire over. And after you get all your bolts out of the flywheel cover, you can, which I already did, I never did put these back in to make the first video. Cover this list off like this. And on most of these, your model type and code numbers either be stamped in the flywheel cover somewhere. And this one is stamped into your other sheet metal on this side. It's stamped down here on the front on it, the model type and code. Real hard to see on this one. Here's your coil right here. You can see how this is a completely different style than the new one, but you can see how it goes here. You'd think it would go like this, but according to the paper it says this side out, so we have to figure out what we got to do there. I'll look at it to make sure I'm looking at it right. You see it's a different style coil. This is more like your traditional coil that you find on like your 12-horse Briggs, but you got 2 wires coming out of it. And you don't have to worry so much about timing on these, but one wire is shorter than the other, because both cylinders, both spark plugs fire at the exact same time, but the timing's backwards on each cylinder. So this cylinder fires and that one fires. They go back and forth. They don't fire at the same time, but the spark plug fires every time the piston comes up, and it just times out that both cylinders happen to fire at the same time. It's not like a V-twin that would require 2 coils or a distributor. Okay, so I'll go ahead and unhook the wire on both cylinders. Go ahead and get this back one routed over here. Binding up on me. Yeah, so all you gotta do is just push up on that, and the wire will come out. See, if that's been rubbing or something, that could cut through that metal right there and cause it to arc and not fire right, or at all. That would just come through like that. You can see, holding these the same, and one wire is longer. This one goes to the cylinder on the far side of the motor. And these should just pull off. Yep. So Kind of messed that up a little bit, but don't matter. Always bend it back. And your new one will just slide right in there. I'm going to try to clean these up so they look new. Go ahead and get this one off too. That one just slid right out, so that's no problem. I was expecting trouble out of that. And I see one thing different already. This coil don't have a removable wire on it. It ties in over here. It's soldered to the coil, so we'll either have to solder it back or put a connector on it. We'll probably put a connector on it to make it a little more easier and replace it again later on if we ever need to. And the only reason we're replacing the coil today on this is because it'll start up and run fine. You can cut grass with it and everything. But if you shut it off, or if you run out of gas while you're cutting grass when the motor's real hot, the coil breaks down and then it don't want to start back up. And that's the only thing I know to do on there, because you don't have points of condenser. So it has to be the coil breaking down on it. I'm going to keep the coil because when the new one goes out, or I get another one that don't run at all, it'd be better than nothing. Most of the time with these Magnetron coils, the coils without points of condenser, you either have two things happen. They either break down like this and don't want to start back up when it's hot, or they just don't work at all. That's really the only two symptoms. Unless you got a bad wire, then you'll have an intermittent spark that comes and goes. That's really about the only three things that can happen to these. So it's pretty easy to diagnose the problem. And also, you always check your magnet on the flywheel. If you got an engine without spark, it's possible for the magnet to lose its charge and your coil won't fire. So you always want to consider that. It's very rare, but it has happened before. I never ran into it myself, but just one of them weird things to keep an eye out for. And another thing, if you got a weak spark or no spark at all, sometimes just these posts here between the coil and the post can be corroded. That'll cause one to not fire right. Okay, here's your two bolts. You might want to clean these up a little bit because sometimes that corrosion can make a difference. You can see right here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. See this corrosion on top of these posts here? This causes it to lose its ground. And there's rust on the coil itself. So that could be one problem with it too, but I'm just going to go ahead and put a new coil on it since the coil is so cheap. You can see how that your shutoff wire is spliced into this. It's weird, I ain't never seen one like this. Most of them just plug in. You can see here, most of them just plug into that. But no, you can't really see it on the video. I can't really get a good angle on it. There's a little tiny bolt here. This yellow wire, which is your shutoff wire, and this wire here bolt to. It's a little bolt, and you got two ring terminals on there on both wires. I'm going to take this loose so we can look at this on the bench, and maybe I can size up another piece of wire to put in there. Okay, as you can see, there's a big difference in these two coils, but same part number, so they came up with a new one for it. These must be bad about breaking down or going out, so they came out with a new one. Either that or they're cheaper to make these. If you look on here, it says cylinder side, and this one says this side out. So that means this coil will go like this. This is the cylinder side facing the cylinder, and out facing the top. Your plug wires should come out the other side, but they designed them like this for some reason, so you got to bind them around like this, or they'll end up wearing out at some point. You see that's the way this one was. I didn't realize it at first, but that's how that one was. So, and this is the wire I was talking about. You just got a little ring terminal here. It's soldered and everything in here. So I'm going to try to get a little piece of wire about the same length. Put a terminal to fit this one there, and a ring terminal on the other end. Alright guys, I just made a little piece of wire here. It's a little thicker wire too, so it's probably better. Got a little ring terminal in there. And this is a bigger one than what's supposed to be in there, but I crimped it, made it fit real snug, so that'll be fine. Okay, coil on this is gapped between 10 and 14 thousandths, so we're going to gap it at 10 thousandths. That's what I always said in one of the small settings, same way with valve clearance. I have other videos on this, I might go into more detail, but I want to show everything on here. Okay, the first thing you want to do is get your coil position. Wires out of the way. I didn't clean these bolts because they're not real bad. The main thing is getting that top of that post clean. The coil will bolt up upside down, so you got to be careful with it. If you put it on the wrong way, they won't fire. And get these bolts where you get a little bit of a drag on it like that. Anyway, you want to get it so you can just barely move it like this. It helps hold it in place. And there's several different ways you can do this. I use a feeler gauge and go back and forth till I get the same drag on both of them. Or you can put a business card in here. That's about the right thickness. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but this always works for me. Or you can use two feeler gauges if you want. Just whatever works best for you. Sometimes you get one stuck on this side like this and get it a little snugger. Then come over here and do the same with it. And you pretty much got it. That's the way I've always done it. A lot of people say I do it the hard way, but it's what works for me. You come back and make sure these are pretty snug. Everybody's got their own way of doing stuff. It's just the way I've always done it. So you want to route this wire down here until you get it to the bolt. I'm going to do this off camera real quick because you can't really see it on there anyway. Just got to make sure nothing grounds out and causes a short, because then your motor won't start. Okay, now we're going to take the long wire. Should be the top one. That's the top one. Now we got to feed this through here like this, so we can work it up underneath of this like that. And this just runs underneath behind the carburetor to the other cylinder, just like that. We'll look at it on the other side here in just a minute. I don't like that sitting down on the cylinder like that. I might put a zip tie or something on there to keep it up like that. But in this one, do the same thing with it. Bend that back down. This one just comes around like this to your other cylinder. I'm going to run it down like this, underneath there, just like that. See, it's a good tight fit. Okay, I cleaned them up WD-40. They look like new ones pretty much. And these should just slide right on there. But you work with it, you'll get it. So right there's that one. And we'll look at the other side. I don't know how well you can see it, but it just comes out behind the carburetor. Make sure you don't get caught on any leakages. And you don't want that to happen. And we'll just put this one on here. This one went on easier. So there's that. Now the wires are hooked up, clearing all linkages and anything else. Now we'll see if I can get them other wires up off that cylinder like that. Alright guys, you can see what I did there. I just put a zip tie around there to keep the wires up off the cylinder head. Two reasons. Heat from that will break down the insulation, and the way it was laying there could have blocked some of the cooling fins. So we'll make sure it's going to be alright there. You don't want to run an engine very long without the flywheel cover, because it directs air past your cooling fins. So just for testing for a couple minutes is fine, but no real long time. Well guys, it seems to be working pretty good. So now we'll go and get the flywheel cover put back on. Alright guys, the flywheel cover pretty much goes back on the same way as it came off. Make sure all your wires are out of the way. You gotta get it underneath the shielding. ground wire bolt hits here. These are all 7/16 bolts. Go ahead and snug this one. That's your ground wire, hooks to your battery. I like a battery in the front right here. The gas tank's in the back on this mower. Only thing I don't like about these twin cylinders is the way they route the fuel line, but I guess it saves space and keeps from wrapping around everything. And on the back here, can be kind of tricky because you got to go through this, goes through this, your flywheel cover, then into the block. Most of the time it's not too bad. You can kind of just wiggle everything around. And like I said, you just want to get these pretty snug. Don't have to be real tight. Especially these over here. You can get the back one a little bit snugger. That's just going into the aluminum box. You don't want to get too tight. And you pretty much do the same thing on the other side. We'll look at the oil breather tube here, the oil fill tube. You just get two little sheet metal screws that go through the mounting bracket into this. Like I said, when you get that flywheel cover off, it's a good time to check your cooling fins, make sure they're clear, and replace the gasket on this. You pick up your oil tube if you need to. Sometimes they do leak. You just put these on there and get your other bolts pretty snug and you're good to go. So we'll get the rest of these bolts in there and we'll start it up one more time just to make sure everything's alright. Alright guys, we're just going to do one more little quick start here. Make sure everything's alright, make sure nothing pulled loose or nothing while I put the cover on. Well guys, I guess that's about it. So if you got any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And stay tuned for the third video on this mower, putting a new solenoid in it. I don't think it really needs one, but I remember last time I had the cover off, it looked kind of corroded. So we'll put a new one in there, that way we'll know it's got a new one. That way everything electrical on it's pretty much new except for the ignition switch. That seems to be still working, so we'll ride that one out. And so, well, like I said, if you got any questions or comments, leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. And thanks for watching.